So I'm Nanci Shipman, the director at, I hate to go so far away. I'm the executive director and founder at WakeUp Carolina, and our office is in Mount Pleasant, and we're a recovery community organization. And we stand for awareness and education with hope and recovery. We do this through our programs and services, and we're firm believers in harm reduction measures, which would be Narcan training to help prevent and overdose death. We also got a state grant for fentanyl testing strips. Since we're one of the top 3 in the country for overdoses, it helps for those that suffer from substance use disorder, it helps them test their drugs, and for those that just want that just in case to test. We have many recovery meetings, all recovery meetings. We just started on Fridays, and we wrote it all, it's all on a sheet back there. Moms meetings, dads meetings, and a young adult program. And when we talk about all recovery meetings, it's for those that are interested in or in recovery to be supported by those that live in sustained recovery. We're not counselors, we're not therapists, it's just a safe space. We do treatment scholarships for those that are looking for treatment options. And we also work with women leaving the Women's State Prison, the Camille Graham Prison in Columbia. They have an addiction treatment unit. It's a 6-month program, and after they graduate from that and they're released, we have found that there's a huge gap for their housing, finding meetings and finding support services. So the men, for some reason, have lots of support leaving, and the women do not. So we're hoping to curb the recidivism rate. It's like 93% for women once they graduate from the ATU, return back to prison within the first year. So we're like, if we can help one, that's pretty much the option, or kind of pretty much what our idea is. We just want to help one, and one helps one helps the other. So anyhow, we're here for overdose education and Narcan administration training. Have y'all ever had training for Narcan before? No? Yes, you have? Y'all haven't? You have? Yeah. Okay. So good. We try to make it to where it's, it's really easy to go way in depth on this, but sometimes it can be a lot. So we're trying to make sure you're informed, you're aware, you're educated on how to use Narcan, why we have Narcan, and how to prevent an overdose. That's our goal today. And also to make sure that you're aware of the laws that protect you as law enforcement, as well as layman or caregiver. So it's good to know those. So the 2 goals as well for this is when we're working with law enforcement, especially aviation, it's going to be for 1 or 2 reasons when you're going to see an overdose. It's going to either be to help someone overdosing that is at the airport, in their car, outside of the airport, or to help one another, because we've seen first responders overdose from trying to situate a scene. So I figured the best way to show both of those is to start with a video first. Y'all sure you can see? Okay.
Not being issued Narcan, but a couple of officers who recently saved a life say they buy their own and carry it.
That's right. We first brought you this story about a week ago after the officers revived a woman in Oakley who had overdosed.
Brittany Herron was able to meet the officers today who say they believe everyone should carry Narcan with them. Brittany.
Well, they do, and Cincinnati police officers right now were not being issued Narcan because what they did have expired during the pandemic. But some officers, such as the 2 who we are about to introduce you to, they buy their own because they say it saves lives. In fact, these 2, they actually have a prior firefighter and EMT experience. But we do want to warn you, some of what you're about to watch is going to be blurred just to protect the privacy of the people that were involved.
It's fortunate that we were on the right call with the right equipment, at the right time, because under any other circumstances, she would have died.
Nobody's heard from her since noon, and she was supposed to be our.
When a local woman didn't show up to a planned family dinner, her loved ones became concerned. So they called on Cincinnati police to check on her. Cincinnati police officers Tim Pappas and Alexander McCoy both responded to the woman's home in Oakley, where she was found in her bed.
I approached the victim, and honestly, I thought she was dead. She was blue, she was cold to the touch, and I did not see any breathing.
Then she took a breath, Officer Pappas says, but even then, he says he knew she didn't have much time. A couple of doses of Narcan was given right away, he says. Both officers, Pappas and McCoy, say they carried on them at all times.
Yeah, I got 2 doses.
Officers Pappas and McCoy say the Cincinnati Fire Department was dispatched as soon as they realized the woman had overdosed.
You gotta go to the hospital because that Narcan's gonna wear off.
That's why they need to know what you took. Was it?
It's cocaine.
Okay, just gonna give you a quick update, right? It appears that she overdosed.
It's okay, Mom.
Cincinnati police say the woman thought it was cocaine. Turns out she had a lethal dose of fentanyl. She had to be given multiple doses of Narcan, police say. On an average shift, officers Pappas and McCoy say they respond to about 4 to 6 overdose calls.
I know it's confused, brother.
You overdosed. That's what happened. You almost died. Okay? Your parents saved your life. Or your mom and your sister saved your life. That's what happened. Addiction is a horrible, horrible thing, and we see it day in and day out. But the most important thing is that when you have someone, who suffers from addiction, that you treat them like a person. Because they are a person. They're someone's son, they're someone's daughter, a brother, a sister. You never know who you're dealing with.
I did my job, and that's what we're here for, to save lives, to help others. And, it can't be any more rewarding of the career path I took, just even if this was the only one. And I did my job.
I'm San Diego County Sheriff Bill Gore. What you're about to see is dramatic body-worn camera footage involving one of our deputies who was exposed to fentanyl during his patrol shift.
You're okay. Don't be sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about. I got you, okay? I'm not gonna let you die. I'm not gonna let you die. It's okay. Just focus on your breathing, okay? Focus on it. I need Narcan. I'm Corporal Scott Crane from the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. My trainee was exposed to fentanyl and nearly died. It was our first radio call of the day, and this was Deputy Five Eyes radio call. He found a white substance that he suspected was drugs.
It's a powder.
Cocaine or fentanyl. It tested positive for fentanyl. This stuff's no joke, dude. It's super dangerous. I was like, hey, dude, too close. You can't get that close to it. A couple seconds later, he took some steps back and he collapsed. I ran over to him and I grabbed him, and he was ODing. And I went to my trunk, grabbed the Narcan, came down to him, grabbed him, and I did one nasal spray in one nostril, opened the other one, another nasal spray in the other one.
I remember just not feeling right, and then I fall back, and I don't remember anything after that.
Just breathe about it. Trying to get him to focus on just breathing, and because that fentanyl, you can't breathe.
It was in an instant. It's as though my lungs just locked up. I couldn't breathe. I was trying to gasp for breath, but I couldn't breathe at all.
Five, are you okay? Talk to me. Oh, no. Don't be sorry. You're okay. Don't be sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about. I got you, okay? I'm not gonna let you die. I'm not gonna let you die. I need Narcan! I got you. I'm trying to not let him go. I wanted him to know he wasn't alone. It's an invisible killer. He would have died in that parking lot if he was alone. Fire department got there, put him on the gurney, his eyes rolled back in his head, and he started to OD again. And he was ODing the whole way to the hospital.
I don't think people realize the severity of just how deadly it really is. I'm Deputy David Five-Eye, and I almost died of fentanyl overdose.
One of the greatest threats we currently face is the synthetic opioid fentanyl, which is 50 times more potent than heroin. Fentanyl overdoses are on the rise throughout our county. Every day, deputies recover fentanyl in our communities. And the county jails are not immune either to the dangers of this drug. Every week, sheriff's deputies intercept fentanyl entering our facilities. When inmates overdose on fentanyl smuggled into our jails, deputies and nurses are saving dozens of lives every month by administering Naloxone, a medicine used to rapidly reverse the effects of the overdose. Fentanyl deaths in California have increased almost 46% in just the last year. Being exposed to just a few small grains of fentanyl could have deadly consequences. The dangers of fentanyl are real, and this drug is killing our communities. Please take the time to share this video. It might save the life of your son, daughter, friend, or a loved one.
Ugh, right? It's real stuff. Has anyone seen, yeah?
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yes, I have a
I'm sorry.
No.
So I should know this. So that scene, just by being exposed to fentanyl, like that, that happened.
That happened.
Just by the exposure, not even, like I guess he just inhaled.
So he must have inhaled it. They did say, and I can't remember if it was the beginning or in the piece about it, they said they don't know the quantity
Yeah.
that he inhaled or ingested or was around, which
So
again.
you just pop that chunk and it's just, wow.
And that's where the other officer was saying, you know, get back. And sometimes, I'm not a first responder, but sometimes I would think you don't even know what's gonna happen when you're just looking or, you know, whatever's transpired, that's when you always have to be on guard, you know, looking at the situation and figuring it out.
Yeah, have y'all seen that? Y'all had experience with that personally? Did you, I mean, I guess y'all know that happens.
Have y'all had any experiences like this with overdoses or having to give Narcan or anything like that?
With the overdoses, yeah, but not having to give Narcan. When I first started law enforcement, we didn't have Narcan. Just immediately called EMS.
Yeah.
To answer your question, a lot of times you don't know what it is you're dealing with.
Yeah.
There's a substance in a package, you open a package and it goes airborne and you're like, God, please don't let this be the day.
Right.
And it
Yeah.
happens. And then
Just like
sometimes
what
you
happened
use
with
it in,
this.
sometimes you don't, and you have to hope for the best. You know, like this situation, it looks like they field tested it and then he had shortly thereafter a reaction. So they likely were handling whatever the substance was.
Yeah.
But like the first video says, you know, it can look like cocaine, it can look like heroin.
Yeah.
It can be on marijuana and you don't even know it. You know?
Right.
So it's a really, really tricky substance and an issue when you're handling any illicit drug.
Yeah.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
Really, yeah, that visual for me is, yeah. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean
No,
to.
I mean, and that's how I prefaced the last training, is that it's a conversation. The way I like to do these is a conversation, so that we're all questions, thoughts, or whatever, because we're only as good as what we know and what y'all can share with us as well. Because the whole thing is feeling more confident, holding your Narcan, having your Narcan, why do we have it, and who needs it? I do skip through some of the slides, so if you see something, somebody else is like, whoa, go back to, I wanted to see that. I'll do it, so just keep me on, let me know. The scope of the opioid epidemic. It sure has been something. It started coming into the news 2014, and what we realize now with time is that the first sign of things changing in the landscape of pain was, what is your pain? Pain is the fifth vital sign. While that was being done in the medical arena, you were having the oxycodones and hydrocodones, all of those pain pills coming through to treat pain. Pain is not good. We don't want to feel anything. You should not feel anything. You should be zero. And so with that, Purdue Pharma and all started changing how they did these pain medications. They're like, okay, well now people are misusing them, but it's not addictive, I promise. They started changing the capsules on the outside so that you couldn't break them and all these other different aspects. Well, what we ended up realizing is that they're addictive. Yeah, they're addictive, highly addictive. 2 days taking it as prescribed, you are physically dependent upon your pain medication, your opioid. And that's not misusing it, it's using it as directed. So as we started noticing this and started realizing and seeing data and listening to people that have been struggling and suffering, we started reversing. We started reversing things. Maybe some pain is good. What are pain alternatives? And for our state, we were leading, I mean, it's crazy, you know, you only have perspective of time. We were leading the country in the top 5 of prescriptions per person. It was like for every man, woman, and child, it was, 5 or 7 prescriptions for every man, woman, and child, which makes absolutely no sense. So what did we do to combat that as a state? We started regulating, very small numbers of pain pills per person. We wanted our numbers to go down. Along with that, we added some state and federal funds to start, heading head on what we were seeing. Numbers are an important part of this. And this is based on 2 years ago, my eyes are terrible, so I'm gonna walk over here. With the numbers that we were given back then, and 9/11 is happening every 3 weeks. Sinking of the Titanic is every 11 days. Attack on Pearl Harbor is every 17 days. Hurricane Katrina every 13 days. A jetliner full of people crashes every 3 days. And the number of Americans that die from workplace injuries in a year, every 41 days. So what does that look like right now? This was, let's see, what year was this, Taylor? Do you remember what, this 2 years ago?
I think that's 2018.
Yeah. And we're always late on data, but right now, if we're talking about how many people died in 2020, it was the largest number ever in history. There were 93,331 fatal drug overdoses across the country during a 12-month period. That is the largest increase in history as a whole, ever. And the thing as well to remember is that when we're talking about these overdoses that are documented, for every one overdose, at least locally we know of, and it's documented through EMS usually, or coroners testing for the certain, the fentanyl or the opioid, to know that that's what the deadly lethal cause of death was. For every one, we know that there are 4 or 5 overdoses that we don't have accounted for in our numbers. So where we are with that number, 93,331, 256 people are dying every single day from an overdose. 256 people a day. That's someone's sister, brother, mother, father, neighbor, coach, teacher. And if we put that into even more perspective, every 6 minutes someone's dying from an overdose. So it doesn't look one way, it doesn't have one age, one zip code. Unfortunately, it is all faces, it is all ethnicities, it is all countries, it is everywhere. So then we scale down to this. We're talking about South Carolina. He referred to, I think where he is, Arizona was at 46% increase in the country for overdoses. And there were 10 states in the country that were 47% higher or higher than 47% in the country compared to the year before. South Carolina was 56%, and we ranked in the top 3 in the country, like I said, for overdoses. So we're not talking about just a South Carolina thing, we're talking about a Charleston, Tri-County thing. Just in 2021, and we get these numbers from HIDA, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Agency, and the EMS numbers that are called for overdoses. We have had, since January 1st, we've had 857 overdose submissions. And again, like I said, that is a crazy number, but if we know those are the only times EMS has been called, that doesn't mean how many times Narcan has been used or overdose has been reversed. So out of those 857 overdose submissions, 599 overdose reversals due to Narcan, leaving 90 fatalities total, which that is, our fatality numbers are lower this year than they were last year, even though our overdose numbers are through the roof. And I'd like to say that has to do with having all these community distributors in the state. That means that no one, that anyone can get a Narcan if they want. You don't have to have a prescription. Every pharmacy has a standing prescription in our state, and that's something we were just talking about in the earlier class, that many people go to their pharmacist and they're like, I need Narcan. They're like, where's your prescription? They're like, I heard you didn't have to have one. Like, no, you have to have one. You don't have to have one. Every pharmacy has a standing prescription for everyone. It can be expensive, even with some insurances or whatnot, but again, in the back we have a list of community distributors to where all they have to do is call and they get one. So with this, I wanted to say that during the first 9 months of 2020, overdose deaths rose dramatically for men and young people. And the other thing that you don't see too often in the news, and I think this is important because we want to, from my experience, we want to put a face on this. This is a city of Charleston thing. This is a this thing, that thing. It's important to know this, especially from the work we've gotten a ton of calls the past 6 months from African Americans talking about, I don't use needles, I don't do pain pills, but this is how I'm feeling, and that's opioid physical dependence. And Black overdose deaths increased 48% during that same period, double the increasing in white overdose deaths. No one's talking about that part, and to me, that's one of the things that we're so passionate about is that the game changer that we saw in the 2 videos with fentanyl. Fentanyl is in every single street drug. Every street drug. There is not one that is immune from. And that is where you're seeing your overdose go through the roof. We're not seeing common overdoses from heroin. It's literally from meth, crack, cocaine, MDMA, you name it. Fentanyl is in all of that. And the other thing that's really hard about this is fentanyl is almost always at least 90% of any drug that is confiscated. So again, that completely explains why our numbers are through the roof. This is data that's important to know. You see that we talk about in 1999 the death rates for overdoses, and then you see the colors change. And then this is for, we were going back to prescription numbers. Let's see, 51.4 per 100 people for 168,148,611 total number of prescriptions. We've gotten much better using the Scripps program to monitor what physicians are writing and who they're writing them to, so there is a monitoring system. Beforehand, we did not have it to where if I was doctor shopping as per se, going to different places, it would be hard for pharmacists to know. But now they plug in your name, the doctor, and then it shows all the doctors that have written prescriptions for you. So again, you know, we're doing everything we can to build out a tapestry. So here are our numbers in 2018. The thing about this is what we're seeing now is an increase in meth with fentanyl, crack cocaine with fentanyl, cocaine with fentanyl. The majority of our overdoses and overdose deaths are everything else but heroin. Are we still seeing heroin? Yes, but we are seeing across the board overdose deaths being all substances. So these are the three counties that are always jockeying in the top position for our state. Horry County, Myrtle Beach, Greenville, and Charleston. Charleston in 2020 went up to #1, and now we're waiting in 2021, obviously, to see where our numbers are, but we're always in the top 3. But 2020 was a really hard year for our Charleston County area. Here are the numbers of our area right now. 11 deaths every hour. I think I had, what did I just have? Every 6 minutes. And so here we go to historical context. Talking about, I can't see that great. Any opioid at the top, synthetic, fentanyl, tramadol, heroin, and then commonly prescribed opioids. When we talk about opioids and fentanyl, do we know what opioids are? Do you know what opioids are? Pain medications, and that's why I was going to give you all this list, which is a really great thing to have. It names all of them. The brand names, generic names, and prescriptions. You're welcome. But again, our prescribing numbers are down, our overdoses are up, so what does that tell you? Street, right? Everything is street. That's what we're seeing the majority of. For you guys, this is crucial to know. If you're wanting to use Narcan, if you're going to use Narcan in your head, you're like, what are the laws? 2015 and 2017 laws have been changed. The Good Samaritan Law came into effect, and the South Carolina Overdose Prevention Act. The South Carolina Overdose Prevention Act was written in conjunction with one of the assistant solicitors and in Columbia, as well as some first responders. So it's written in a way to protect you. What it says is the act seeks to grant immunity from both civil and criminal prosecution to doctors, pharmacists, caregivers, and first responders who are engaged in prescription, suspension, and administration of Naloxone or Narcan and a suspected opioid overdose. Good Samaritan Law protects a caregiver who gives Naloxone to a person in good faith experiencing an opioid overdose from civil or criminal liability. It provides criminal immunity to a person who calls 911. So those are two laws to know that you're protected. So pretty much what's on your little handout. I also give some examples of opiates and opioids. And what are opioids? They include illegal drugs like heroin as well as prescription meds to treat pain such as Percocet, Oxycontin. How do they work? Do you all know that we have opioid receptors in our brain? We are born with opioid receptors in our brain, which I did not know until I started learning about this. I'm like, of course, we're perfectly made, right? So when we have opioids in our system, they bind to the specific receptors in the brain and spinal cord and GI tract. It minimizes what pain feels like, perceived or real danger. And a lot of times when we're dealing with hospice patients, or if you've had someone in hospice, they use morphine. Many times they're unable to talk about where they hurt. But the beauty is that when they take the morphine, it goes exactly wherever those receptors are to help null that pain. So there are needs for opioids, it's just having an educated understanding of what you're dealing with. The unique thing too about opioid receptors is that when the opioids goes to the receptors, it's almost that reward part in your brain that tells you, this is good, kind of like breathing, this is good. It's odd how those things work. The effect of it also affects breathing, mood, and your blood pressure. So obviously the more opioids that covers the receptor, breathing stops, your mood de-escalates. So here we go. The receptors and an opioid. The crazy thing is we are made so perfectly that the opioid receptor is almost like a tee, like a golf tee. And the golf ball or the opioid sits perfectly on that opioid receptor. And something that's interesting is for those that are suffering from an opioid use disorder, the more that they're using opioids, you hear about a tolerance. The opioid goes on and starts hitting that T, and that T starts kind of tearing apart. So when that ball, the opioid, goes to sit on the receptor, it doesn't fit just perfectly. So then the feeling, and I don't know if y'all heard this, the feeling of that first high or that first feeling is never attainable ever again. So then you have to use more and more opioids to get that same or similar feeling, which is it's a crazy thing how it works, to where when we start seeing behaviors from someone that is struggling, we're like, that makes no sense. Why would you do that? That doesn't make sense. If you overdose, why would you go do this again? I don't get it. That's a logical brain, and we're talking about a brain disease to where these receptors are tearing apart. So what are opioids? What are not opioids? This is kind of a tricky slide because, yes, these are all opioids. On the other side are not opioids, but fentanyl are in all of those opioids. So that is what made everything different, is you really can't find one substance free, like fentanyl free. So how does overdose occur? If you deliberately misuse a prescription, or you take an illicit drug or a street drug. Heroin, we hear people when we were talking about, they're taking prescription drugs for their pain, and then the prescribing measures started going down, and then we saw heroin going up. Heroin was cheaper than buying pills off the street. Well, now what we hear, and people find this hard to believe as well, fentanyl, people take pure fentanyl. So yes, we can talk about being in all sorts of drugs, but it has got to the point now where they can get more fentanyl for the price that they can of the heroin. So to us, we'd be like, it'll kill you, it'll kill you. It will end up building up a tolerance just like everything else. It's this weird, it's just weird how it builds this tolerance where you seek. It can be sorted, it can be injected, obviously if you're taking a pill, it can be consumed that way as well. How else can occur? Taking prescriptions as prescribed, you know, and even those that are prescribed opioids, the people in their house have a high risk of overdose as well if they don't have them locked up or put up in a place to where others can't gain access to them. Dosing error. Someone that took our Narcan training a couple of years ago was at a football game, and there was a man, and it was after the game, and he was slumped over in his seat. And they're like, that's odd. He was an older gentleman, white hair, and they were like, you know, knock on the window, hey, you okay? Didn't move, knock, knock, knock. Hey! And so they opened the door, and on the other side of, you know, the seat beside him, he had his Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday pill, you know, regime. And what they found out is that he had accidentally put 2 opioid pain pills in his medication for his PM that night. So luckily this mom ran to her car, she's like, this can't hurt him if it's not an opioid overdose, blah, 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 blah. And so she gave him the Narcan and he came to. So the thing is, this does not look one way. It's all colors, all ages, all situations. We talk about who's at risk. Everyone's at risk at some point. Who is high risk? What we have found is people that are leaving jail, people that are leaving prison, people that left treatment facility, people that have not used in a very long time are at a high risk. Higher risk the most because they have zero tolerance. And when we see overdoses happen in those situations, it's when they think that they can knowingly use what they had before and they can't. Gets them straight into an overdose. So this is a lethal dose of fentanyl. I say this loosely, yes, it's a lethal dose compared to the size of the penny. But again, when we talk about this, if someone has rotator cuff surgery and they have been on pain medication, their tolerance for opioids are gonna be a little bit higher than prior to having rotator cuff surgery because they've been taking opioids, you know, as prescribed. So say they are a first responder and they've been on pain medication, done in the, you know, doctor supervised, what might be a lethal dose for her or him would be different than someone else. Again, it can be this, but at the same time, it can be a lot more. That's why this is such a unique thing. You always have to treat it like no matter what you see, it's lethal. So how do we prevent an opioid overdose? The number one way is preventing an opioid overdose death is our Narcan. It is crazy to think, and we usually have testers, but we forgot at the office today. It's crazy to think this little thing, you squirt once, and it brings somebody back. It's an amazing little thing. Everyone should have one. There are another couple of ways you can do it. Back in the day, the original one was like the Cadillac the state had. It was going to tip later. It would say, in 3 seconds, you will put this on the person's leg. It talked you all the way through it, but it was crazy expensive. So obviously, we're to nasal. How does the overdose occur? Do y'all know how it starts looking? Are y'all aware of how it starts when you start having an overdose? Your brain starts signaling to stop breathing and slowing it down. And it starts telling your heart to start slow down and it's beating. Slow breath, breathing stops. And when you start not taking as many breaths and your heart's not able to get the oxygen throughout your body, the more time it has without oxygen, brain damage starts occurring. And then if they're still left untreated without Narcan, death ultimately occurs. So how does Naloxone work? This is, we were talking about that golf tee, right? Opioid and opioids and opiates fit perfectly on top of that tee. And when someone is in a appeared overdose, the Naloxone, spray high in their nose, knocks that opioid off the receptor. So then oxygen and air is coming back because it's telling the body to start breathing. They have half-lives though. That's the thing about this, is Narcan has a half-life. So when we were able to in the past couple of years, give someone 1 or 2 nasal sprays and it would revive them, bring them back to life, reverse the overdose. What we're seeing now is it's requiring anywhere from 3 to 5 nasal sprays. And that shows the potency of what's out there now. It's important to know, before we literally thought it was just 2 until we started learning, no, it's 3 to 5. So when it's talking about officer safety, fentanyl can come in all drugs, we stated this, it can come in, there is not one drug that we don't know of that it has come in. So that is something very important to always remember. How do you come in contact with illicit drugs? Breathing, eating, touching your eyes. Liquid drugs can be, absorbed through the skin, being stuck by a needle. So this is what they recommend, which I know you already do this anyway. You analyze the incident, and then you determine if drugs are present or not. From your experience, are they always present? I mean, do you always see things that, no, a lot of times you don't. And they don't want you to either, right? Always wear gloves. Yeah, that's the first barrier, is always wear gloves. Avoid performing tasks or operations that could make the drug go airborne, which again, is being intentional in everything we're doing. Do not touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. After touching service, wash your hands.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, ask.
My wheels are just spinning. So I know that this is what y'all do, y'all probably prepare for this. So I'm thinking about, say, in a home, say my husband abuses opiates, I'm not aware, he's doing fentanyl, so if my children I got close to that, like that, the same thing, similar thing that could happen. I mean, obviously that was probably a lot, but just if someone touched that substance, I'm going back to my brain still on that binning.
Yeah.
So.
Could that have the impact? So if it's like a.
Yeah, because it just, okay. I wonder how often that happens.
Well, what we've seen a lot of, I say we being like the nationally and also, fentanyl patches, for pain and hospice patients. In this area, and this is probably 2018 when I was hearing about this a lot, children going to the bathroom trash cans and pulling the fentanyl patch out of the trash can and sucking it because they thought it was like a sticker or something. And then the baby having an overdose. And it's real. I mean, and then that's the real thing. So children, we're seeing a lot of cocaine, almost all cocaine is pure fentanyl with like maybe 1% cocaine or whatnot. Now that's why we're seeing like kids that just drop off super quick.
Just to bring it to geography, I know a very specific situation happened about 8 or 10 weeks ago in Mount Pleasant, or maybe not Mount Pleasant, maybe they were in North Charleston, doesn't matter, they were here, they were in county. And again, if you don't pick and choose, it doesn't look like 3 young boys and a wife, the husband was abusing fentanyl, and he was hiding it in an M&M dispenser on his desk, his home work desk. Now, thankfully, the wife found it, but a child could have easily picked that up.
And overdose just like that.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too, when people say, caregivers should be trained on Narcan and first responders, but I'm like, 9 times out of 10, you don't know you're a caregiver.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, these are discreet,
when we're talking about fentanyl being in all substances, it's discreet. Usually people that are using cocaine or meth or whatever, they're very discreet, and the family is the last to know, so everyone needs to be a
she had no idea.
Yeah, because how would she? Something was going on, but
something was going on,
Yeah.
but not to the extent that till.
But the Narcan won't hurt anybody. It will not hurt any children, dogs, people, anything. It's harmless, no allergic reactions or any of that, but you're right. You're exactly right. Signs of opioid overdose, which can result in death. You know what the number one thing people say, and I think it's important to know what the number one people say, and it's not, yes, you see the blue lips or the blue fingernails, but the number one people say is snoring. It's this weird, we can say death rattle or whatnot, but people say before there is a death rattle, even from early on, it is this weird sound, this weird snoring sound. And I can't stress that enough because it's coming up more and more and more and more that people are finally talking about that. So anyway, unresponsive to shouting, pain stimulation, the sternum rub. Y'all know what sternum rubs are. Okay, and it's better for them to be all bruised up from getting them awake than not, because if left without Narcan or anything, they will die. This person's dying, slow dying, so we want to do whatever we can to do our best to wake them up. Problem breathing, blue, purple, gray face, fingernails, lips, ashen color, pale, clammy skin, loss of color. I mean, it looks like the life has been sucked out of them. Pupils, if you want to look at their eyes, it is going to be the tiniest of tiny pinpoint pupil. Slow heartbeat, low pressure. From my understanding is you can barely feel the pulse. That's what usually you can't find the heartbeat. It is a low pulse. Examples of the lips and fingers. Example of the sternum rub. I'm happy to go over it, but if everybody knows what it is, we can pass that. Support the person's breathing. This is called rescue breathing. Have you all heard of rescue breathing? You want to make sure that their mouth is clear and there's nothing obstructing, which would be causing the sound or the lack of oxygen. You start the rescue breathing. That should help someone start breathing on their own if this is not an opioid overdose. Step 3 says dial 911 immediately. I know this is how our slides are. I always say dial 911 immediately. You don't know how far away anyone is to help you. And we can do the sternum rub, but for me, what I say is WakeUp Carolina and Nanci Shipman, and if this is any of us in our room or something I'm doing, every life counts, every second counts. Every second they don't have oxygen, they are getting brain damage on their way to death. First thing you do, you check for breath, no breath. You hear a sound, you don't hear a sound. You call 911 immediately. You can put them on speaker or whatnot. I know y'all are 911, but I'm just saying whatever that protocol is. And then you check for breath, and then you get that Narcan out as fast as you can. And it's one and done. There's no pumping, priming, or anything. When you hit it, and again, we usually have testers. I wish you could test it, but you get it. One hit, and it's up there. So squish, put it as far up in the nose as you can. You're not gonna hurt them. They're gonna die if you don't do this. Stick it up in their nose, push it up, and the mucous membranes in the nose absorb all the medication. Because someone said, don't they need to breathe it in or suck it in? I'm like, they can't do that. That's the beauty of this. This absorbs right into it. So stick it up high, push it in quick, drop it. Do the same thing. Stick it up high, one and done, and drop it. And then do the sternum rub, see if they're breathing, be talking to them really loud. And if you're still not getting a response, this is when we're seeing, it's almost that we know 3. 3 is the magic number to reverse an overdose. That's when you do the third. You cannot give someone too many. If anything, you can give someone too little. The thing about this is that every second counts, every life counts. This person, however you come upon them, did not intend to overdose. No one intends to overdose, ever. They don't even know they overdosed. So this is important to know. When the person comes to, it might be after 1, might be after 2, might be after 3, might be the 4th. You have already called 911. 911 is coming. When the person starts coming to, number 1, they're gonna be like, oh my God, why are you around me? They're all discombobulated like you saw in the video. They're like, what's going on? This isn't what I intended. This isn't what and then you just start with a reassuring voice. You're safe, you're okay, you overdosed, what were you using? And the more we know what they're using, because if you don't see anything around, 9 times out of 10 it's in their pockets or somewhere close by, and then they'll return to that. Just because when you do the Narcan, it automatically puts them into a withdrawal. Right, Greg? That's what you reiterated to everybody with our last one. And so, anyhow, and when 911 comes, we have the right to turn them away because they don't want to go anywhere else. They start feeling sick when they're withdrawing, because you would think they'd be like, thank God you saved my life. They don't believe you a lot of times. I say they being those that overdosed or struggled because they can't believe that's true. The last thing they knew, they were snorting or smoking or inhaling or whatever it is they were doing, and then they just went to sleep. So they want you out of their face as quick as they can. They start feeling sick, and then they need to go feel better. We don't have a law to mandate that they go to the ER. And if they do go to the ER, 9 times out of 10, they leave within no time, and tough things happen. That's when they're vulnerable. This is also very important. as I said, naloxone sits on those receptors for a certain amount of time, and then it pops off. And if you have your opioids that are still circulating in your system, it gets right back on that receptor. So they can go, like, they can be telling you, I'm fine, don't worry about me, you know, I'm going, it's all good, don't call anybody, I'm fine. And then you're like, okay, I was just trying to help, and then all of a sudden they collapse. They go back into an overdose. That's what people don't realize. So that's why that calling 911 is crucial, because if you've exhausted all of your Narcan and then they go back into an overdose, and then you call 911, God knows how far away they are until they can get some more Narcan into them. So it's a half-life. It only lasts for a certain period of time before they could potentially go back into an overdose, and that would be horrific. It is important that, say this happens and they're by themselves, that you at least try to get a point of contact for them or call someone so that someone is monitoring them. If they are refusing care from the ambulance, they're not wanting to talk to you, it's really important as much as you can to get a point of contact so someone is with them. This is the recovery position, just putting them on their side, obviously, when they come to, so that they're still able to breathe and not choke. This talks about the withdrawals. I don't know if y'all have heard this, and if you have, tell me. It has been told that, gosh, when I did Narcan, they came to and they came out swinging, yelling, cussing, all of this. Have y'all heard that before? Have you experienced it? So it can come from one of two places. Back in the day, a lot of ambulances had like that drip Narcan, so it would be like they would push that Narcan, super quick into them, which would be like fire going in their veins, and they would come up screaming because of the pain, but we didn't know that pain was associated with it until we had time to learn, and that might not be the best way of injecting all of this liquid naloxone into them. The other way is it's rare if we know that people take one substance. Usually, they're taking MDMA, it has flux of pink heroin in it, it also has fentanyl in it. So opioids are the things that get knocked off with the naloxone, it brings you out of the overdose, but whatever substances are also in their system, drinking, cocaine, meth, whatever else may be in their system that they took with the fentanyl, unknowingly or knowingly, you're gonna see those symptoms present. So if someone comes acting hammered or acting whatever you may seem, like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Whatever they took it with is the symptoms it's gonna present. And again, it doesn't mean they can't go back to that overdose. That's why it's important to make sure you're monitoring them and watching them, and if called 911. So manufacturer storage instructions. Keep away from light, never store in freezer, keep out of reach of children and pets. It cannot hurt a child or pet. It would just mean that if a child or a pet has used it, you won't have it if you need it to. I'm gonna say from experience that we live in Charleston, we work in Charleston, it is hot as Hades. It is rare that even on our own body to keep Narcan at room temperature if you're gonna keep it on you. Manufacturers say to do that, but personally, and like when I talked to the Myrtle Beach proper police, they said, we're on our, they have like these, I don't know, the things they take on the beach. They're like, we have on our fanny packs, it's gonna be hot as hell out there. I need to have it on me. And I was like, I'm telling you what manufacturer's storage does. It is much better to have it on you than it is for there to be an overdose that's sitting in your glove compartment or sitting on the counter at home. So the number one thing is use it. Wherever it needs to be, however many you need to have it on you at all times. So that's us. I'm the director, and Taylor is community outreach, and Greg is peer sports specialist. And we believe in what we do. This is personal to us. If you have any questions about the training, I tried to zip through a little bit. I wanted to make sure you knew the laws, how you're protected, what to do to help someone with an overdose. But when I say this is personal to us, every life counts. I lost my son summer of 2016, 48 hours after leaving treatment. And so he overdosed. There was not Narcan, and he didn't have oxygen to his brain. So it's personal, and this town really supports our work. and we're grassroots, and we care about what we do. We believe in individual recovery, we believe in family recovery, we believe in community partnerships. You know, we can't do this alone. That's why we need law enforcement, we need treatment providers, and that's why any opportunity we can ever get to be able to bridge gaps and remove barriers, those that we know, but also y'all are the ones that are hitting a number of people that we don't ever have the opportunity to. So for y'all to know that we're a resource for someone that if you ever have an overdose, or if you have a member in the community that is just looking for support or, you know, treatment options, you know, we're here. And we welcome you to be part of our journey, because we only want to do what's right for the right reasons, for what the community needs. So thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?